September 1023, Teventian Empire. The great palace rises into the sky as heavy doors swing open. A figure strides inside and bows before the woman waiting in the shadows, addressing her simply, "Mother." He has returned with the 5th imperial prince and offers her a humble gift. But the woman before him is Stephanie, Empress Dowager of Tevent, and she is already seething. She hurls an object at him in fury. She had asked him to live quietly. And yet while he was away, he killed the empress. Her green eyes burn with rage. How dare he? The man bowing before her is Heras Delgado, Emperor of Tevent, blood still fresh on his face, and he turns to her with a calm that is somehow more terrifying than any shouting. If she keeps this up, he says quietly, he will have no choice but to kill her too. Mother or not. Later, Heras soaks in a bath while his imperial advisor Oscar Taylor reads him the morning reports. The Empress Dowager is already spreading rumors outside the palace walls, telling everyone that His Majesty has now killed his 3rd empress. 3 empresses, all dead. Oscar warns that the late empress's faction must be kept in check. Heras only smirks. The Empress Dowager is quick at spreading rumors indeed. He cannot leave the palace now. The throne is empty and hostile factions are circling. He clenches his fist beneath the water. He has never believed Stephanie is his true birth mother. If he could only find proof, he could bring her down entirely and destroy the faction behind her. Then comes word from the north that stops everything cold. November 1023, Northern Territories of Teventian Empire. The land is ravaged. Towers crumble under dark skies, and a bloodied sword drips in the frozen air. Eleonor Snow, 3rd child of Count Snow, stands battered on the battlefield, her silver hair tangled, her violet eyes still sharp. Her father, Count Jaden Snow, surveys the carnage and asks whether House Owen and Osborne have fled. Eleanor answers quietly, "No, father. They will be here soon to attack us." She explains the full weight of the betrayal. For generations, the 3 northern houses, Snow, Owen, and Osborne, stood united against the Rascalites, pagans who worshipped the god of destruction, Rascalis. When Duke Owen proposed luring the Rascalites into the Snow domain for a coordinated strike, House Snow trusted him and followed the plan. But House Owen and Osborne never came. Enemies poured in alone. The Snow domain burned. Countless lives were lost. They had been betrayed. Eleanor makes her decision. Close the gates, she tells her father. Hold them back while she is gone. She is going to the capital to meet the emperor. Her father calls Heras cruel and irrational and demands to know what she is thinking. Eleanor simply says she has a plan. Back in the capital, the court already debates the crisis. The Snow domain is on the brink of collapse. If House Snow falls, the entire north will follow. And no one holds back the Rascalites the way Snow does. That night, the doors to Heras's private chambers creak open in the dark. He moves instantly, blade drawn. A cloaked figure stands before him and apologizes for the intrusion. He demands to know how she got in. "A little magic," she says. He asks her reason for coming. She lowers her hood. She is Eleanor of House Snow, daughter to the Count, and she has a request. The name Snow has followed him all day long. He tells her he will forgive the intrusion. However, if her request displeases him, she will die where she stands. Eleanor holds his gaze without a tremor and speaks her request clearly. She has come, she says, to claim the vacant throne of Empress. Eleanor Snow stands before Emperor Heras, her voice unwavering as she makes the ultimate gamble. She requests to claim the vacant throne of the Empress. Heras, testing her resolve, unleashes a crushing, suffocating aura. Eleanor trembles under the weight of it, gasping for air, but she clenches her hands and refuses to back down. Recognizing her struggle, Heras observes dryly that she is clearly human, questioning if the news of the third empress's death a few months ago failed to reach the harsh, biting cold of the north. Eleonor confirms she knows, and that the tragedy is precisely why she has come. She offers the allegiance of House Snow to the Emperor, but Heras smirks, dismissing her crumbling family domain and stating he wouldn't blink if it fell. Yet Eleonor presses on, declaring that she knows he secretly values his people above all else, personally joining unnecessary expeditions just to draw enemies away from the common folk. Taken aback by her presumption, Heras demands her true motive. Eleonor answers simply. She wants to protect House Snow and will do anything for her family. Amused and intrigued by her audacity, Heras warns her that the imperial palace is a lethal, freezing place, but accepts her request. However, when Eleonor asks to return north to help her father, Heras refuses. He notes they have only known each other for a few hours. He does not trust her. Instead, he commands her to rest in the palace, promising to send his own people to handle the north. Confined to the Tulip Palace as an honored guest, Eleonor conceals her impending title from the maid, Cecily, knowing that anyone in the palace could be an enemy. Alone, she breaks down in tears, mourning her eldest brother and cousins lost to the war. She clutches her hands in prayer, desperately hoping her father can hold the line. Little does she know, the situation in the north has already turned tragic. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Library, Heras confers with his confidant, who is shocked that a daughter of House Snow would so willingly throw her life away. Heras admits Eleonor is clever and knew things she shouldn't, which is exactly why he mistrusts her. He reveals that he has dispatched his most elite force, the Black Order of Knights, led by Adrian Terrace, to the north. To his advisor, the move is clear. It is a trap. If House Snow's domain war is a ploy orchestrated by the Empress Dowager, the Black Knights are ordered to wipe them out completely. Heras vows that if Eleanor's words prove true, and she still wishes for the throne by then, he will indeed make her empress. Deep in the northern territories, the invading forces of Duke Owen and Count Osborne are on the brink of victory when Adrian Terrace and the Imperial Knights arrive, intercepting them. Adrian delivers a chilling royal decree. To make an enemy of House Snow is to make an enemy of the Imperial Palace itself. Furious and bewildered by this unprecedented intervention, the enemy forces are forced to retreat. Adrian rides into the castle, requesting to speak with Count Jaden Snow. He is met not by the Lord, but by a young man stepping forward to deliver a devastating truth. Formally introducing himself as Teventian Snow, the second son, he announces that as of now, he is the new Count Snow. With a cold smile, the Emperor delivered the devastating news of Count Jaden's death to Eleonor Snow. The Count had fought valiantly, and had he stayed in the rear, he would have survived, but he was never one to hide behind the backs of others. Struggling to hold back her tears, a shiver ran through Eleonora's body, yet she found the strength to thank the ruler and ask about the safety of her mother and brothers. The Emperor confirmed they were alive, but immediately questioned whether she still desired to become empress, knowing it meant risking her life. Eleonora answered with absolute certainty. She knew this title was the only way to protect her family from the hostile houses of Owen and Osborne, while her second brother, Count Teventian, held their ground. Astounded by her resolve, the Emperor set the wedding date for 6 months later, cynically adding that she would first have to survive until that day. Eleonora promised to wear her most beautiful smile on their wedding day, and the Emperor merely smirked, anticipating the spectacle. Left alone in the Tulip Palace, Eleonora vowed to her father's memory that she would not shed another tear until her enemies were completely destroyed. In this empire, the title of empress held little security. To the ruler, she was just a replacement in the palace, and to enemies, a prime target for assassination or blackmail. Her life was constantly on the line, especially with other desperate concubines lurking in the palace, craving the throne. At that moment, a knock interrupted her thoughts. Her maid, Cecile, announced the arrival of Calliope Rhiannon, the second imperial concubine from the Rose Palace, who was notorious for her ruthless ambition. Calliope strutted in without permission, instantly stung by Eleonora's breathtaking beauty. Blinded by jealousy, the concubine flew into a rage when Eleonora didn't even bother to stand and bow. However, the mistress of the Tulip Palace only looked at her guest with icy contempt, knowing full well that Calliope was the one who had tried to poison her. For the past 2 weeks, Eleonora had been testing all her food with a silver knife, and 2 days ago, its tip had turned black. Cecile was the only one who fetched her meals, and the maid's swollen cheek made it obvious she had been brutally punished for the failed assassination. Calliope began to mock her spitefully, claiming she knew all about the death of Count Snow and taunting that times had changed, meaning Eleonora could no longer rely on her family's status. In a calm, steady voice, Eleonora openly accused her of the poisoning. Calliope panicked, trying to talk her way out of it and claiming the emperor would never believe such an accusation. To this, Eleonora smirked, replying that she didn't need His Majesty's help to deal with a concubine who had already lost the monarch's favor. Infuriated, Calliope lunged to strike her, but Eleonora easily dodged, leaving her guest to smash an expensive vase instead. Leaving in a fit of rage, Calliope threatened that Eleonora would regret her words, but the daughter of House Snow coldly called out after her, stating that she never regrets anything. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, court advisor Hensa Igler reported to the Dowager Empress that the daughter of House Snow had settled into the Tulip Palace, ready to gamble her life to save her family. The Dowager Empress recalled how she had never managed to win over the late Count Jaden, and she pondered with deep intrigue what kind of woman his proud daughter would turn out to be. The isolated, snow-covered estate was drowning in a heavy fog of alcohol. Franklin Owen furiously emptied glass after glass, cursing the sudden and disgraceful failure of the territorial war. Everything had gone to ruin, and it was all due to the emperor's unexpected intervention in the affairs of the northern houses. Sitting beside him, Persephone Osborne tried to bring him back to reality, reminding him that he was the mastermind behind the betrayal of House Snow. It was then that Franklin revealed his true, chilling nature. Slurring his words, he confessed that his fiancée, Eleanor, had always been too independent and proud. He had engineered the downfall of her family with a single purpose: to completely isolate the girl, strip away any support, and force a broken Eleanor to finally submit to him. But the alcohol took its toll, and Franklin passed out cold. Left alone with his unconscious body, Persephone couldn't resist kissing him gently. In the silence of the room, her bitter confession of unrequited love echoed. She genuinely couldn't comprehend why Franklin was losing his mind over a woman who would never bow to him, while completely blinding himself to the woman who was ready to give him everything. Meanwhile, a completely different atmosphere governed the very heart of the imperial palace. Lady Eleanor Snow stood by the window of the Tulip Palace, where she had been temporarily placed. From afar, the echoes of festive bustling drifted in. The capital was fully preparing for the grand New Year's celebration, only emphasizing the eerie loneliness of her current situation. However, the time for tears and mourning was over. Realizing that survival and the protection of the few remaining people required action, Eleanor decided to make her first move. At that exact moment, deep within the palace's underground dungeons, the emperor was delivering his judgment. Bound by powerful spells of submission, another captured spy was bleeding out before him. The emperor, accustomed to constant assassination attempts and intrigues, didn't even bat an eye when the guards reported that Eleanor Snow was urgently demanding an immediate audience. The ruler instantly saw through her plan. The girl had decided to use his colossal influence for her own ends. A predatory smirk appeared on his face, and he ordered the guards to bring the guest straight down to the dungeon. Eleonor entered the grim torture chamber with a perfectly straight back and a freezing composure that immediately intrigued the emperor. She didn't even flinch at the sight of blood, and her gaze instantly caught the residual traces of a highly complex spell lingering in the air. Noticing her perceptiveness, the emperor bluntly stated that he disliked powerful mages, as they know how to lie far too skillfully. Eleonor responded flawlessly. She calmly replied that she had nothing to hide, and that it would be foolish to attempt to deceive someone who is undeniably stronger than you. Having disarmed the ruler's suspicion, the girl got straight to business. To firmly hook the emperor and force him to listen to her terms, Eleonor asked with a knowing hint if he wanted to find out what shocking event was about to take place right in the midst of the upcoming New Year's festival. The tension inside the Tulip Palace dungeon could be cut with a knife. Snow makes her ultimate move in this high-stakes game, revealing a chilling truth to the emperor. The New Year's festival is approaching, but instead of celebrations, the Rascalets cult is planning a bloodbath. Their goal is to orchestrate a mass sacrifice right in the middle of the crowds to gather enough energy to open the rift, unleashing hordes of monsters into this world. Snow knows all too well that if this catastrophe happens, the emperor's authority will be crushed, and the people will deem him a cursed ruler. That is precisely why she proposes a deal. She is ready to step onto the front lines, risk her life, and stop the monsters herself to prove her family's absolute loyalty through action. When the emperor bitterly remarks that having someone you are willing to die for is an unaffordable luxury, Snow delivers a precise psychological blow. Looking him dead in the eye, she promises that if she takes the empress's throne, she will protect his life too, because then they will be family. But her ambition does not stop there. Noticing how hungrily Snow looks at the surviving captured assassin, the emperor smirks, accusing her of greed and even feigning jealousy. However, the girl's motives are entirely devoid of romance. She needs a loyal and deadly blade in this viper's nest, and she demands the prisoner be handed over to her. The emperor warns her that the boy is under a powerful subjugation spell and could drive a knife into her back at any moment, but Snow remains unyielding. She craves absolute power to crush her enemies. Amazed by such icy resolve, the ruler relents, allowing her to take the assassin, provided she can actually break the curse. Stepping out into the palace garden, Snow celebrates a small victory, but her deep thoughts are interrupted by a sudden and highly awkward collision. A suspicious-looking guy crashes into her at full speed. Judging by his appearance, Snow assumes he is a mere gardener, haughtily scolding the stranger, telling him to show better craftsmanship, and casually tossing out that she likes begonias. Little does the arrogant lady know what a mistake she has just made. This insolent guy is no servant, but a disguised E.O. Bastide, lieutenant commander of the White Order of Knights. Intrigued by such an eccentric individual, E.O. decides to play along and notes down the valuable information about her tastes, clearly plotting a game of his own. The chapter ends on a melancholic and ominous note. While Snow is in her chambers reminiscing about her hometown where begonias always bloomed, there is a sudden knock on her door with the news that a mysterious and highly unexpected gift has just been delivered for her. Duke Oscar Taylor, one of the Emperor's few trusted confidants, watched Eleonor Snow intently. His visit was no mere courtesy. Looking down at the unconscious, wounded captive, Eleonor was astonished. The Emperor had sent him over so quickly, but what truly amazed her was that the man, who had just been covered in horrific wounds, was already completely healed. As expected, an astonishing healing ability, she thought. This power was granted by the gods only to those who carried the blood of the Delgado lineage. It became glaringly obvious why the Emperor always emerged unscathed from countless battles with monsters. Suddenly, Oscar broke the silence with a question that sounded like a hidden test. "Have you already broken off your engagement, Lady Snow?" "I am referring to your fiancé, Lord Franklin Owen." Eleanor instantly saw through his motive. Oscar had intentionally brought up Franklin to test her loyalty and true intentions. Images of her deceased loved ones flashed before Eleanor's eyes: Eric, Altard, and her father. Every single one of them had been ruthlessly destroyed as a result of the insidious conspiracies of the Owen and Osborne families. Did she have even a single reason left to maintain this engagement? Oscar continued to press, recalling that she and Lord Owen had been close since childhood, and asking if it was truly a marriage without love. Eleanor responded coldly and firmly. For those who rule, duty comes before feelings. This marriage had been planned for the welfare of their lands, and back then, Franklin seemed like a decent match. But now, everything had changed. The only feeling she harbored for her old friend was pure, searing hatred. If you become the Empress, will you take revenge on them? The Duke asked bluntly. Without hesitating for a single second, Eleanor replied, "Yes, I will have my revenge." Her sheer determination struck Oscar. He realized exactly why the Emperor had taken an interest in this woman. No matter which wound was pressed, she didn't even flinch. Concealing his admiration behind a polite smile, the Duke said his goodbyes, expressing hope that their next conversation would be more pleasant. Eleanor watched him leave, assuring him that she, too, had found enjoyment in their talk. Left alone with the captive, Eleanor set to work. Examining his bronze skin and fiery red hair, she deduced that he hailed from the western kingdom of Brant. However, something else caught her attention. A massive spell of absolute submission had been cast upon the man. Who in the Empire possessed enough power for magic of such a high caliber? At that exact moment, the captive regained consciousness. Eleanor sharply pinned his hand to the berth, suppressing the flash of fury in his eyes, and spoke commandingly. "I am Eleonor Snow, your new master. What is your name?" The man breathed heavily, wrapped in a suffocating aura of bloodlust. To force him to speak, Eleanor channeled her magic, sending a painful jolt through his body. Without the submission spell active, he was once again vulnerable to physical pain. Straining through the agony, he gasped, "Karen." Eleanor softened slightly. "A beautiful name. Do you remember anything else?" Karen's mind was clouded, but one memory was etched into his soul forever: the sight of his own hands killing his mother under someone else's ruthless command. Eleanor cared nothing for his past. She needed only one answer. "Who ordered you to kill the Emperor?" Hoping to keep his life, Karen revealed the terrifying secret. The mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes turned out to be a woman. The highest-ranking woman in the entire palace, the Dowager Empress. Meanwhile, in her private chambers, the Dowager Empress was speaking with a servant. The servant was visibly nervous, reporting that the assassination attempt had failed and the assassin had vanished without a trace. Yet, a sinister smirk played on the Empress's face. She hadn't expected success on the very first try anyway. The servant worried that the mercenary might break under the Emperor's torture, but his mistress remained entirely unfazed. No one was capable of breaking her submission spell. Heras would never find out a thing. The Empress inquired if everything was prepared for her main plan. Upon receiving an affirmative response, she uttered with a chilling smile that the wait would not be long. Soon, the moment would come when the Emperor would have to say that accursed word to her once again: "Mother." Intrigues in the Imperial Palace are flaring up with a vengeance, and the tension is reaching its breaking point. A furious consul, Calliope, bursts into the Lily Palace to see the first Imperial consul, Aurelia Rogers. Calliope is practically boiling with rage. The sudden appearance of the newcomer, Eleonor Snow, has utterly shattered her peace of mind. Sensing a mortal threat to her position, she wastes no time in proposing a secret alliance to Aurelia, suggesting they join forces to throw the audacious lady out of the Tulip Palace. Calliope is certain that if they do not unite right now, Eleonora will easily claim the vacant throne of the empress. However, Aurelia Rogers meets this emotional outburst with an absolute, chilling composure. She masterfully plays the card of a perfect, submissive subject, declaring that she has not the slightest desire to covet the throne. According to her, all she wants is to fulfill His Majesty's will and become a loyal wife to Heras Delgado. Calliope is forced to back down in the face of this wall of feigned indifference, but she decides to deliver a precise, venomous parting blow. As she leaves, she casually reminds Aurelia of just how dazzlingly beautiful Eleonor Snow truly is. Calliope strikes at her most vulnerable spot, asserting that Emperor Heras will inevitably fall for Eleonora, not just as a calculating ruler, but as a man. And this arrow hits its mark. Left entirely alone, Aurelia can barely suppress a tremor of rage, for her lauded composure is nothing but a mask, carefully hiding her true, wounded feelings for the Emperor. Meanwhile, at the Tulip Palace, Eleonor Snow is faced with an unexpected visit. By the Emperor's personal decree, a new attendant is assigned to her, a statuesque blonde man named Eobastid. But the moment the new servant speaks, a wave of pure shock washes over Eleonora. His voice sounds intimately familiar, and she instantly realizes where she has heard it before. It is the exact same voice of the mysterious gardener she spoke with just recently. Eleonora quickly connects the dots, realizing that the man standing before her possesses advanced illusion and appearance-altering magic. Since magic of this caliber is something very few in the Empire can wield, the rules of the game become crystal clear. Heras Delgado has sent his personal spy with a single objective: to keep her under constant, round-the-clock surveillance. The Emperor still doesn't trust her one bit, and now every single step she takes is watched by the eyes of a dangerous mage. The scene shifts to the cold, endless expanses of the Northern Territories, the ancestral lands of the Snow family. Eleonora's brothers, Aster and Havelion, receive a secret message from her, delivered by a loyal bird. The lines of the letter breathe a frozen resolve and shock the brothers to their core. Eleonora shares incredible news. Before summer arrives, she will be crowned empress. However, ruthless enemies stand in her way to the throne. Eleonora warns her brothers that the factions that cold-bloodedly slaughtered the previous empresses in the past may now turn their blades against the House of Snow. To protect her family, and buy time, she plans to strike a preemptive blow against the House of Osborne. Since their lands are barren and they survive solely on trade, Eleonora orders her brothers to immediately cut off all of their trade routes. Havelion and Aster are amazed that even while trapped in the very heart of the palace's viper nest, their sister continues to think like a brilliant, cold-blooded strategist. Havelion accepts his sister's will without a second thought. He knows perfectly well how strong she is and deeply respects her choice. Now, the brothers' duty in the north is to forge a solid, crushing foundation for the bloody and arduous path to power that Eleonora has chosen for herself within the capital's walls. Moorish, storm-laden clouds hang low over the Delgado estate, as if nature itself is foretelling an imminent upheaval. The atmosphere within the ancestral seat is tense, strained to its absolute limit. Standing by the stone balustrade and gazing into the darkening horizon, the young nobleman Heras Delgado tightly grips the hilt of his sword, the heavy symbol of his authority and his burden. The footsteps of advisor Lawrence Mills, approaching from behind, sound deceptively soft. Lawrence, whose entire existence is woven from intricate plots and clandestine conspiracies, extends a sealed scroll toward Heras with a faint, venomous smile. He casually reminds the young lord that the fragile peace with the northern houses, bound only by signatures on parchment, is not worth a single copper coin in Teventer. Heras, however, meets this warning with an icy, unyielding confidence. He declares that the Northerners fear no treaties. They fear his personal retribution, for the hounds of the Empire still remember the taste of spilled blood all too well. Yet, Lawrence Mills delivers a preemptive strike to his confidence. He informs Heras that while he was preoccupied with diplomacy, his ambitious and unrelenting sister, Lillian Delgado, had already convened the Lesser Council behind his back. The sting of betrayal forces Heras to act on impulse. He snatches the scroll from the advisor's hand and breaks the wax seal, ready to confront the threat face to face. Meanwhile, in the grim council chamber illuminated only by the flickering, uneven light of torches, Lillian Delgado masterfully plays the part of a true ruler. Seated at the head of the long, dark wood table and flanked by her loyal guards, she commands the room with absolute authority. When Heras slams the doors open, loudly accusing her of usurping power, Lillian meets his emotional outburst with a cold, performative serenity. Taking a deliberate sip from her goblet, she looks at her brother with icy disdain and asserts that Teventer requires a strong, ruthless leader, not an idealist who puts his faith in hollow alliances. While Heras wasted precious time on negotiations, Lillian secured the tangible, crushing support of the Imperial Legion. A suffocating, deadly silence descends upon the room. At Lillian's unspoken signal, the guards step forward in unison, cutting off Heras's path of retreat and shifting the balance of power within these walls. Barely containing his fury, Heras rests his hand on his blade, fully aware that his sister is consciously driving their house into a bloody civil war. Lillian, however, remains unfazed. She presents her brother with a stark, uncompromising ultimatum. Either he submits to her will for the ultimate triumph of House Delgado, or she will erase him from her path. Watching this brewing fracture within the ruling family from the shadows is Lawrence Mills, observing with a chilled, deep satisfaction that the rules of the game in the Empire have changed forever. In a secret room hidden from prying eyes, the sinister, red-haired noblewoman Calliope Rhiannon handed a glass vial containing a toxic green potion to her maid, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Her order was perfectly clear and ruthless. Discreetly pour this poison into Eleonor Snow's face lotion. When the terrified maid asked in a trembling voice about the effects of the drug, her mistress only laughed maniacally, explaining that this poison would cause the skin to rot alive, and that she was eagerly waiting to see her rival's beautiful face turn into a mangled mess. Meanwhile, a completely different atmosphere prevailed in the bustling square of the capital. Emperor Heras Delgado and Eleonora Snow strolled leisurely through the crowd, enjoying their date together while passers-by bowed reverently and whispered in their wake. The emperor calmly noted that their public appearance would inevitably trigger a wave of rumors in the palace. However, Eleonora only smiled mysteriously, admitting that this was exactly what she was aiming for. The more the enemies panicked and anxious, the more fatal mistakes they would make in their haste. Struck by her insight, the ruler inquired how the late Count Jaden Snow had raised his daughter, to which Eleonora replied with her father's main lesson: never, under any circumstances, entrust your life to someone else's hands. These words echoed bitterly in Heras's heart, and he grimly added that in his youth there was no one to teach him this wisdom, so he had to learn self-reliance through harsh and painful trials. Suddenly, Emperor Heras stopped and decided to reveal the true, pragmatic reason for their walk today. He explained that they had not walked along the busiest part of the city for nothing. All along the path, he had secretly planted 37 magical mana stones capable of activating a powerful protective barrier in case of danger to save innocent citizens. The only problem was that organized evacuation of people required reliable knights, and in a palace flooded with spies, the emperor could trust absolutely no one. Recognizing his dilemma, Eleonor Snow decisively took the initiative into her own hands. She firmly stated that he did not need to involve outsiders and that she would personally handle everything, promising to come to the square every single day until the end of the festival to monitor the order. To the emperor's fleeting doubt about whether she could manage alone, the girl proudly asked if the future fourth empress was incapable of such a small thing and promised to exceed all his expectations. This unwavering loyalty and strength of spirit mirrored recent events, when the fate of a captured assassin was being decided in the dungeons. The exposed killer begged to be released to freedom in exchange for the name of the assassination's client. However, his captor, who turned out to be Eleonora herself, reasonably countered that a man born and trained only to take lives would inevitably return to his old trade once free, for people always do only what they know how to do. Instead of an illusory and dangerous freedom, the prisoner was offered a completely different, noble path: to stay, prove his loyalty, and learn to create rather than destroy. Eleonora promised to show him all the beauty of this world and help him uncover other talents so that, by finding the true meaning of life, he could gain a real, well-deserved freedom. In the dim light of the luxurious chambers, Cecily carefully shook a vial of facial lotion, the liquid inside shifting with an ominous pinkish tint. With a soft thud, she returned the vial to the dressing table and hastily slipped out of the room. From his hiding place, a red-haired youth named Karen watched her every move with a dark, intense gaze. A cold thought crossed his mind. Did she just poison the facial lotion? Well, it's none of my business. Soon after, the rightful owner of the room entered, Lady Eleonor Snow, a stately woman with noble silver hair and a deep scar on her cheek. Karen stood at a respectful distance. When Eleonora asked if anything had happened in her absence, the boy hesitated for a moment before lying, claiming that nothing had occurred. Just then, the doors creaked open, and Cecily wheeled in a cart with lunch. Karen followed the maid with a chilling, suspicious glare. Cecily grew visibly anxious, cold sweat breaking out on her forehead, but she hurried to make her exit. Eleonora warmly invited Karen to the table, revealing that she had ordered this entire feast to be prepared specifically for him. As the youth picked up a golden meat pie and took an appreciative bite, a soft but melancholy smile graced Eleonora's face. She remarked that meat pie seemed to be his favorite dish, which Karen confirmed with his mouth full. Eleonora drifted into memories of her homeland, the Snow domain. She spoke of how, on freezing winter days, she would return home with numb hands, bite into a hot venison pie, and feel as though she owned the entire world. She sighed softly at the memory, adding with hope that they would surely return there together once peace was restored. These words melted the ice in Karen's heart. Unable to hold it in any longer, he broke his silence and confessed that Cecily had poured something into her lotion earlier. Eleonora merely offered a mysterious smile and thanked him for the warning. Meanwhile, in the Rose Palace, the second consort, Calliope, was gloating in anticipation of her triumph. She was certain that by today, the hated Eleonora's face would be permanently disfigured, and she would never dare to show herself in public again. Humming to herself, Calliope routinely applied the lotion to her own face. Suddenly, a sharp, unbearable agony seared through her skin. Rushing to the mirror, the consort shrieked in horror. Her face was breaking out in severe inflammation and ulcers. The mixture intended for Eleonora had somehow ended up in her own vial. Overcome with rage and pain, gasping for air in her fury, Calliope concluded that the maid Cecily had betrayed her, and swore that both Cecily and Eleonor Snow would pay dearly for this. In the first consort's Lily Palace, news traveled fast. Upon learning of the incident, the first consort commended Eleonor Snow's bold countermove. However, Eleonora herself was in no hurry to show deference to the high nobility. When the messenger returned to the first consort, the ruler could barely contain her rage. Eleonora had completely ignored her summons, remaining out shopping until late evening. Furthermore, the audacious northern woman had sent back words that made the consort clench her fists in fury. She stated that she was in no position to come running at the first beck and call, and if the consort had business with her, she should come herself. Deeply insulted, the ruler ordered strict surveillance to be placed on the Tulip Palace, vowing to crush the arrogant woman's pride. The following day, a much more dangerous and intriguing encounter awaited Eleonora. The emperor insisted on personally accompanying her on secret outings to keep an eye on their enemies together. Eleonora worried that His Majesty's presence in the city would draw too much attention, given that every subject knew his face. However, the man only gave a confident smile and set a meeting at a city cafe for 10 in the morning. Arriving at the designated time, Eleonora anxiously scanned the establishment, doing her best to keep her face concealed. She froze at the entrance as her eyes fell upon a man sitting at a table. Despite his disguise, she recognized those features instantly, and her heart skipped a beat as she softly murmured, "Your Majesty."